That, in my view, is misconduct by the executive. And in a democracy that work, they can actually form a basis for impeachment of the president because he's accused an entire organ of government and he has not provided so far even a single piece of evidence in support of those allegations. They are trying to clean their house. But still, even as they're doing so, the collections that they've made on the housing levy from July 2023 to January 2024 is illegal. Those collections, deductions on our salaries were made without a legal framework, and they have a duty to refund us that money. Because he's actually admitting that the administration that he leads has been engaged in acts of corruption. Now, who in that administration was facilitating these acts of corruption? And what action, even before you go to the judiciary, what action has he taken against his own officers? Because they are still within this administration, still the executive. Those who are still serving, what action has been taken against them?
Well, a very good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year 2024. Of course, I'm so glad to have you yet again on another interesting episode of the Candy Talk here on Herman Manyora's YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this year. Definitely, we are more than glad to have you back. And of course, I do hope and pray that you're well this year. And we thank God for allowing us to see yet another vibrant year. And I wish you all the best that this year definitely has to offer. Welcome to the family. Well, this fine morning, I'm joined by one of our guests here. Of course, he's been with us, Wakili Willis Otieno. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. Yes.
How is your year moving?
The year is starting so far so good. Cannot complain.
Okay.
Despite the challenges coming out of Kenya Kwanza. Yes.
They're in talking about the challenges coming out of Kenya Kwanza, as you're saying here. That, of course, that is the government of the day. But then, do you think that perhaps things might change this year as compared to perhaps the last year or rather the other year, gauging by how the government is going about its mandates and functions in the country?
Without a doubt, things will not change. In fact, they'll change for the worse. When we were here last year, and I did mention to you that we're having a debt crisis, and President Ruto, in his last address to the media, the joint media interview that he had last year, and even yesterday when he met with the Jubilee MCAs, he did indicate that out of every 100 shillings Kenya government collects, 70 shillings goes to debt finance. In his estimation, in fact, he used the example of out of every 10 shillings, he's left with 7 shillings. Of the 7 shillings, he's left, actually, he pays 7 shillings to debt, he's left with 3 shillings. 3 shillings to pay salaries, government operations, and counties. It's not enough, because salaries alone takes 35 shillings. Government operations will need 30 shillings. Counties will need a minimum 15 shillings. So our problem is an expenditure problem. Debt is taking the bulk of our national revenue, and they're not collecting enough taxes to be able to meet the demands of the money. And what we foresee this year, largely, is a high potential that there'll be a debt default by the Kenya Kwanza administration on the payment of our debts. And what Kenyans need to start asking is, what is a default? And what does it mean to your way of life? What does it mean to your money in the account? What does it mean to your money in your M-Pesa or mobile phone wallet? How does it affect you in terms of even your ability to access basic goods and services across the country? A default is a painful thing. You don't wish it on a country. And countries that have gone through defaults have had long years of attempted recoveries. And if you don't have a solid economic platform or program, then the default may actually collapse an entire country. And that, in my view, is going to be the biggest problem that we are facing. Just also to buttress it, remember the Eurobond, there's a bullet payment coming up this year in June. And there are also certain domestic debts which are due for payment end of this month, early next month. And if government is not able to pay those debts, that will be a default. The Eurobond alone is 300 billion bullet payment at a go. Do they have enough reserves and enough money to pay for that debt. If they don't, then there's going to be a big problem. There was an attempt to have the IMF to pay that money. President Ruto had promised that they'll make part payment last year by the 30th of December. That never happened. They had also sought to have Trade Development Bank, TDB, to refinance that Eurobond. They had hoped to sign an agreement by the end of the year. Didn't happen. So we are actually staring at a high possibility of a debt default by Kenya Kwanza. And Kenyans need to plan their lives accordingly. What will that mean to how you live your life? Yes.
Well and good. Let's wait and see. But we do hope that the country may go in the right direction, in as much as you're telling us to prepare for the worst. But here we are. I want us to get into this conversation. Of course, in the recent past, a number of things have been happening in the country, especially towards the end of the year 2023 and towards the beginning, actually at the beginning of the year 2024 here. The president is unrelenting in his quest to implement what he calls the plan. He says he's got the plan. And then he's actually sustained the scathing attacks against the judiciary, accusing the judiciary of engaging in corruption and kind of sabotaging his plans of implementing a number of things, even after making certain statements back then at the end of last year that did not actually augur well with the section of people in this country. He is at it again and seemingly is unrelenting. Tell me, what do you make of the kind of, or rather scuffle, rather what that we are witnessing actually between the president, or rather the executive arm of the government and the judiciary? Is it healthy, or is it that should the president actually be behaving in such a manner as he is behaving right now, anytime that the courts do anything that actually does not favor his kind of ideology?
You know, it's very unfortunate that you condemn an entire institution of corruption. When you sit at the executive branch of government, you have access to a lot of instruments, including national intelligence and the law enforcement agencies. If an individual judicial officer is corrupt, then you need to bring evidence against that judicial officer, and we have a process laid down in law of how to deal with a judicial officer who is engaging in corrupt actions. So far, until this point, I have not seen any single evidence or even public document shared by the executive indicating which judicial officer is corrupt. In any event, if you look at the conduct of the judiciary in the recent past, what makes the executive uncomfortable is because people have exercised the right to go to court and have challenged certain decisions that the executive and the legislature have made to question their constitutionality. And the courts, in their wisdom, have made decisions. And these are at the High Court level. There's still the right to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court for any party aggrieved by the decision of the High Court. And if the executive is exploring that option, you cannot again have the head of executive standing out on a public platform to accuse the judiciary of being bribed to make decisions. At what point did this bribery start? Who bribed? And where's the evidence in support of that allegation? Is he also saying because President Ruto has been a beneficiary of certain orders issued by the courts, is he then by implication indicating to us that those orders which were issued in his favor were procured through corruption and that those judges were bribed? So a wholesome condemnation of an institution will not be appropriate. It is better if there be evidence or allegation against a particular officer, then that evidence needs to be shared with the relevant agencies, JSC, and can even be shared with the Kenyan public to make up their mind as to the conduct of that judicial officer. You did witness sometimes last year, Mike Sonko did release some evidence about a particular former judicial officer, a judge of the High Court. And that matter was processed through the Judicial Service Commission, and that judge was removed from office for misconduct, and even went to court to challenge his removal, and the courts upheld that his conduct in the particular circumstances were not conduct expected of a judicial officer, and he has been removed. And the Supreme Court has a decision upholding his removal. So also, we can say that when you want to raise the kind of things the president raised, and this is no other person, this is not just a journeyman or a man on the street making this allegation. This is the head of the executive making an allegation and a total condemnation of the entire executive without providing any scintilla of evidence to buttress or to support those allegations. And the nature of the allegations being made are serious in nature because you're talking about corruption. That means that you are saying that the arm of government that is vested the responsibility to oversee the administration of justice has been captured, is now being influenced by corrupt elements to make its determination. But so far, we are not seeing any evidence in support of that allegation. That, in my view, is misconduct by the executive. And in a democracy that work, they can actually form a basis for impeachment of the president because he's accused an entire organ of government and he has not provided so far even a single piece of evidence in support of those allegations. I will actually urge him that if there be any evidence in support of the allegations of corruption on any single judicial officer, that evidence needs to be brought to the public and the information needs to be shared and the due process alone needs to take its course. And that particular officer should be removed through the process provided for in the law. We are a country of the rule of law, and that is the basis upon which we interact amongst ourselves and with the government.
But don't you then think that the president's assertions definitely raise some weighty questions with regards to the conduct of judicial officers in the country?
I'm not here to defend the judiciary. I'm simply saying allegations of corruption against a judicial officer need not be prosecuted on a public platform.
Okay.
It should be prosecuted through the legally provided avenue, which is you provide a petition, send it to JSC, give your evidence, JSC will make a recommendation that that officer should be taken to a tribunal. Tribunal will hear the case, and if there's evidence in support of the allegation, then you remove. But if you make it on a public platform, in a political rally, how have you helped the country? Because you made it there, then what? The next day we are all in court, the same courts, seeking justice. But you have evidence somewhere, you have material somewhere that a judicial officer is being influenced by corruption to make a decision. If you don't take it through the process provided in law, how have you helped the country? Because that judicial officer you're talking about, since the statement was made last week, but one, to date, they are still in office. There is no action that has been taken against them. There is no petition filed for their removal. That is what we are simply saying. If President Ruto has evidence that certain judicial officers or all of them are involved in acts of corruption, can he invoke the process provided in law and have those judicial officers removed? He should not say it in public and leave it at that. He's not helping us. He's not even helping the institutions of government that we've established as the people of Kenya.
The office of the president definitely has got access to all the legal advice that it actually requires. Of course, the office of the attorney general is there to make sure that that happens. Now, going by the kind of roadside statements that the president is making, do you think that perhaps he's being advised the wrong way or he's intentionally doing what he knows?
It's possible. It can be both ways. No, I cannot tell you the details of the legal advice that he receives because maybe the advice has been given, but I don't think the lawyers will be competent to advise him on what to say in a public political forum because he's the politician. They are the technocrats. So, and I believe the Attorney General will not have advised the President that the way to remove a judge is to make blanket allegations on a public platform that there's corruption judiciary and then you hope it goes away. No. The AG is a competent lawyer. In fact, he's a former judicial officer himself. He was a magistrate. And he's been a speaker of parliament and he's long-serving legal practice. I don't think the kind of legal advice he will have given is what we are seeing the president engaging in. If advice was given, then we need to see judicial officers being taken through the due process of the law and being subject to tribunal hearings and the evidence provided by the executive. And as you've said, the president has access to so many intelligence information, evidence. He has an entire national intelligence service that is this beck and call. He should collect the evidence and initiate the process of removal of these corrupt judicial officers. And I'm not saying all judicial officers are clean. Of course, there may be elements within the institution who are corrupt, but you are not helping the country if you make the statement and you leave it at that. You need to make the statement and follow it up with action. Provide the evidence, tangible evidence, invoke the rule of law, go to JSC, and we have a tribunal set up to remove these officers. It is in our interest that they are removed if there indeed there is evidence of them engaging in corrupt actions. Yes.
And of course, I believe that our president is intelligent enough and definitely he knows what the law says in regards to such kind of things. But then right now, when he makes such kind of statements, What would you make of his intention, definitely regarding now the kind of cases that we're witnessing in court, and he goes ahead and makes those statements that a number of people would say that maybe threatens the independence of the judiciary as well?
Well, what you can say that maybe he's trying to intimidate the judges, because he's now addressing the judges who are handling these cases that public-spirited Kenyans have lodged in court against certain of their decisions. So maybe he's trying to intimidate them, to harass them. He's applying executive pressure and public incitement against them. If you have any evidence, go to court or go to tribunal or go to JSC. If he's not doing that, then it simply means one thing. He's now playing politics with the cases. He's actually commenting on active litigation that is going on before the courts. You know, that is what in law we call sub judice. And he's actually committed an offense by making those kind of allegations that those orders which have been issued by the courts have been procured by corruption. Why is he commenting about a litigation that is actively still pending before our courts? That will be sub judice, and he should actually be held for contempt of the court.
Tell me, how does the president, how possible is it for, because when the president makes such kind of statements and he says that everybody knows, it's in the public domain, that corruption is imminent in the judiciary, and he'll not give them any room, he'll start fighting from there, saying very well that back then the government had set some funds to for bribery and all that manner of all those kind of statements that he made at that particular moment. And I'm actually now wondering, now that he was saying all these things here against the judiciary, something which is, of course, the judiciary is part of the government. What then do you make of these statements by the president himself, knowing very well that the judiciary should be an independent arm on its own operating?
In fact, what the starting point in that allegation should be this. How much was set aside? That's the questions that the president needs to answer. How much of public fund was set aside to bribe judicial officers? In which fund or account was this amount held? Who are the signatories to that account? How much was disbursed from that account to bribe judges? Who was the one who signed off that money to be used to bribe judges? How did the judges receive? Which judges received money from that fund? Which cases were they handling? And how did they rule on those cases? Now, these are totally new area that if he was public-minded and being driven by the desire to uphold the rule of law, he should have answered all these questions. And he says, here's the money. The fund was being managed by X. Disbursements were being made by Y. It was paid to Judge A. The case that was being influenced was case C. The decision was this. And this, the person who was the conduit, who was distributing the money to the judges. But so far, as I sit here today, I have not seen a single answer to any of those questions that I've said the president ought to have answered. Because he's actually admitting that the administration that he leads has been engaged in acts of corruption. Now, who in that administration was facilitating these acts of corruption? And what action, even before you go to the judiciary, what action has he taken against his own officers? Because they are still within this administration, still the executive. Those who are still serving, what action has been taken against them? Has there been administrative or criminal sanctions that have been brought against them for operating a fund that was meant and was used, in his own words, to bribe judicial officers to procure certain decisions? Then tell us those decisions. Because it means the people of Kenya are the ones who suffered when decisions were made not by application of the law, but purely on the promise or on the benefits of a bribe that was facilitated by the executive, which William Ruto at this point is leading.
A number of people would ask, is it the mandate of the president to fight? Actually, literally speaking, is it his mandate to fight corruption in the judiciary? And how possible is it? It
is the mandate of every Kenyan. Every Kenyan has a duty. Because remember, in our constitution, Article 3, everybody has the right to uphold, defend, and to protect the constitution. Corruption is a vice which our laws don't allow. So every Kenyan, including the president, has a duty to fight corruption in any shape or form and in any agency, be it in the executive, the legislature, or the judiciary. But in fighting corruption, you must do it in a manner that is prescribed in the law. It is not by standing on top of car rooftops and howling at Kenyans that there's corruption, thief, thief, thief. But you're not shelling us any evidence in support of that allegation. What he is doing is mob lynching. And mob lynching has no place in our democracy. Mob lynching is used for when somebody is doing something without evidence and he wants to incite the public to engage in a lynch, become a lynch mob, to lynch that person without any evidence. When we go back to look at what transpired, why this person was being accused, you find there was no evidence. That cannot be what we promise in our constitution. That is now misbehavior, misconduct by the president, and he needs to be called to order. If he can't be called to order, then he needs to substantiate his allegations. If he doesn't substantiate his allegations, he will have his day with destiny, because what he's doing is actually tearing apart the Constitution of Kenya. That Constitution of Kenya does not belong to the executive, does not belong to the legislature, does not belong to the judiciary. It belongs to the people of Kenya. And his day with destiny will come when the people of Kenya, if Parliament fails to impeach him, the people of Kenya will have a day to decide if he deserves to sit in that office as their president.
Do you believe the president when he says that these court orders are actually sabotaging his plans?
No. Because what does the court do? The courts are simply considering the policy that has been made, what the so-called plan, vis-a-vis the provisions of the Constitution. If the court says you didn't follow the law in coming up with your policies, what stops you from following the law in coming up with that policy? On the housing fund levy, if I was to pick that as an example, they were simply told, you have a levy, you're calling it housing levy. Which ministry is it housed in? Which is the voted? It's not there. How is this fund being administered? It's not there. You simply came up with a finance act and introduced what you are calling the housing levy. But there is no regulatory framework to manage that levy. So you're collecting money from people without a legislative framework that will be used to administer that fund. And in their own recognition of their failures, they have proposed an affordable housing bill in an attempt, belated attempt, to respond to the legal questions that the housing levy raised. If the courts were wrong, why then are they proposing the affordable housing bill? Because it's a recognition that they were wrong from the beginning. And the court's duty was just to call them back to order. They are trying to clean their house. But still, even as they're doing so, the collections that they've made on the housing levy from July 2023 to January 2024 is illegal. Those collections, deductions on our salaries were made without a legal framework, and they have a duty to refund us that money.
Well and good, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to stop this conversation at this particular moment. But here, of course, you've heard from Wakili Willis Otieno here, giving his views on the kind of attacks that the judiciary is actually receiving from the President William Ruto here. We are actually wondering why the president is doing so, knowing very well that there is, of course, a legal process through which any matter in this country or any issue in this country can actually be solved, even if it's involving the judicial officers in the country, whom he is accused of being corrupt and sabotaging his plans and policies in the country. Well, tell us what you think about what is taking place in the country with regards to the conversation that we've just had here. And of course, I'll be more than glad to go through the comment section and read each and every comment that you people shall have commented down there. Allow me to stop for now till we have this conversation again. Have yourself a lovely day. My name is Evans Okinyi.